What's up, Wall fans, Common Sensors, podcast consumers? Welcome to the video feed for yet another very exciting edition of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke, and this is episode 101. I'll be honest, I've been running around a bit, trying to get this one done, and of course, time change screwed with me, and we've got to just cook through some of this, because I've got to get out to a show tonight, and I'll talk about that when we get to entertainment news. So with that, all that being said, let's just jump right into episode 101.
Who 1, 2, 3, go tell it to the wall. Tell it to the wall. Go tell it to the wall. Tell it to the wall.
All right, Wall fans, Common Sensors, podcast consumers. Welcome to another very exciting edition of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke, and this is episode 101 on this fine March Sunday of 2023. We got a lot to get into today and not a lot of time, so before we get into all that, we of course always kick things off with our social plugs. You can keep up with us during episodes, after episodes, for episodes, whenever you so please, and you can do that in multiple locations. One of those would be facebook.com/go-tell-it-to-the-wall. That's right, facebook.com/go-tell-it-to-the-wall. That's our official Facebook page. Of course, head on over to YouTube if you're a YouTube user and subscribe to our channel, youtube.com/go-tell-it-to-the-wall. That's right, youtube.com/go-tell-it-to-the-wall. And then, of course, my own personal Instagram account, which is at SoCalSean, SoCalSean, at SoCalSean, right there on Instagram. Lots of mostly show photos going up there lately because I am so backed up, but you will get some Go Tell It to the Wall content on there as well. And I can tell you right now, I follow most people back if we have like follows in common and all that good stuff, but lately there seems to have been a rush on these kind of spam accounts that are like a female name and a bunch of numbers, and then you go there and click on their thing and they're just trying to get you to like follow for like, it's always spicy pics and stuff, and it's like, well, no. And it's funny because I think Instagram cracks down on those because they seem to disappear from my notifications before I even get a chance to check it out a lot of times. So I don't follow those back, but if you're somebody that's actually actively using Instagram, I usually do follow back, especially if we have a lot of friends in common, like follows in common, that kind of good stuff. Anyway, don't forget, in addition to our social plugs, SeanO'RourkeLive.com. That's right, SeanO'RourkeLive.com. That's our official website. You're going to find content on there that you won't find on any of those social platforms, as well as a link to our Patreon campaign. I always am talking about Patreon. If you're not familiar with it, you should familiarize yourself, even if you don't want to support us through Patreon. There's lots of other great artists, musicians, broadcasters, stuff like that right there on Patreon. And actually, just a side note, this conversation was coming up on a Discord I was on, because a lot of people use Twitch and they subscribe and they're giving money to broadcasters and musicians through Twitch. Just an FYI, Patreon gives a much bigger percentage back to the actual person, artist, whatever it may be, as high as like 88%. So it's a very small percentage that Patreon actually takes, especially when compared to Twitch and some other sites where you can financially support people whose content you enjoy. And if you don't want to get on Patreon, but you do want to support us financially, you can pick up some Common Sense merch. There is a link to our merch website right there on SeanO'RourkeLive.com. Pick up some t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, all kinds of good stuff right there on the merch website. So make sure you click that link and check that out. Get yourself some Common Sense merch. All right, I said at the top of the video feed, we're running a little behind today. I got screwed over by the time change. Everybody hates this time change. I don't know why we continue this daylight savings stuff. We had a bill, like a unanimous bill that just never got put before the House to just eliminate daylight savings time in this country, and I'm here for it completely. But then also, I didn't quite change all the clocks in the house, wasn't looking at my phone, and I thought it was an hour earlier than it was. And I need to get out to a show tonight, so we're going to kind of breeze through as much as we can, and hopefully push out a full episode for episode 101 of Common Sense Sundays. All right, now let's get into some digital trends. That's right. It's funny, too. The sun came out after raining like crazy, and I've been running around trying to get everything ready, and I'm like overheated now. I was freezing the past couple days, and now I'm overheated. It's kind of ridiculous. Anyway, some digital trends here. So all the UK, they were trending on the digital platforms this week for a quite hilarious reason. Now, they had a bag of marshmallow bunnies and chicks, like smaller marshmallows, not the big marshmallows, not like quite like peep size, but smaller ones. And of course, this was for Easter. So people in in the UK, this happened in the UK actually. I don't know if they're available at Aldi stores here in the US, but in the UK, people looked at these and realized that the shape of, I believe it was the bunny, because it's bunnies and chicks, had a bit of a strange design. Without getting into it, I'll just tell you it's a bit phallic. And as you would expect, these pictures started to go viral and was trending on the social platforms. And in fact, it got to the point where Aldi UK even tweeted they either retweeted or they tweeted a response, and they were like, you know what? Even we don't have an explanation for this. So highly comedic. I'm not going to say go out and check this out and see the phallic shaped marshmallows, but it is quite entertaining. And it's like, we're not prudes here. It's kind of like getting a cake for a bachelorette party. It's really funny. Nothing too crazy or too graphic, obviously, but definitely having that certain shape. I will say, be careful if you're picking up a bag of those and going to Easter dinner. Grandma might notice something a little bit different about those shapes, and you don't want to get into that conversation. Really, grandma, mom, dad, little kids. Hopefully little kids aren't going, hey, what's that? Either way, just be aware. Pick them up for yourself, but maybe just be conscious of where you are taking these marshmallows on Easter Sunday. You don't want to get into that awkward conversation with some of your relatives. Oh, man. My favorite part of that is that all these, even we don't have an explanation for this. Just own it. That's the thing. They're not going to lose a bunch of money. This isn't a scandal. It's more of just a hilarious thing. And they owned it. They're like, yep, we put out something that doesn't quite look the way it's supposed to. All right, hashtag SVB collapse. SV as in Victor, B as in ball, collapse. That's right. If you haven't heard of this one, you've probably been living under a rock. This just happened a couple days ago. There is a bank called Silicon Valley Bank up in the Bay Area of California. I assume it's in Silicon Valley. I don't know exactly where their main branch was located. This is a bank that was created years ago and was the primary bank for a lot of venture capitalist groups working out of Silicon Valley, a lot of tech companies, that kind of stuff. They completely crashed the other day. In fact, the government had to seize their assets because they didn't have... And I am not a bank expert. I can tell you that right now. I know the minimal stuff that I need to know. This is the reason that I have a financial advisor. And not that I'm like super, but, I'm not the person that's sitting there playing stocks, moving stuff around to different banks. Not me. So I'm not going to pretend to be an expert here. What I will say is there's a couple things that came out of this. Apparently it was causing some panic with other banks. In fact, people were going to other large banks and withdrawing their money with the fear that even those banks could go under. Now, the chances of that happening, from what I understand, are very minimal, but it's understandable. Now, the other thing, one more thing I want to point out, and I think that we're going to get to the bottom of this, or we won't, because this happens a lot with wealthy people trading stocks. Apparently, the execs of Silicon Valley Bank sold a bunch of stocks like 2 weeks prior to this happening. So clearly, I'm hoping that if it is the case, they get the Martha Stewart treatment, because that's absolutely wrong. It was something like $4 million or billion, something. That was rich people money, not something I ever have to deal with. But hopefully, we're going to get at least some transparency on this, because it seems like there might have been some sketchiness from the executives of Silicon Valley Bank. The other important thing that this brought to mind, and I believe I've said this before, so actually two things. I don't know a lot about banking, but I know that we have a thing called FDIC insured. All banks across the United States of America are FDIC insured, which means if you have money in a bank and that bank goes under, something like this happens. So even with Silicon Valley Bank, your account at that bank is actually insured for up to $250,000. So if you have $250,000 or less in a bank, you actually don't need to worry about this. You will get that money back. Now, if you have more than $250,000 in a bank account, this is something I learned in high school. This is why it's important if you have a lot of money, and I'm not giving financial advice, but you diversify. You don't put $1 billion into one bank account, because then if something happens, you're only getting $250,000 back. Keep that in mind. And the other tip I want to give to everyone, and this is the thing I believe I've mentioned in the past, big banks, not the way to go. No. Everywhere around this country, and I'm sure in other countries as well, we have what are called credit unions. Federal credit unions that are also going to have that FDIC insurance, and they're not pulling in huge accounts and all this stuff and then spending money like crazy like a lot of these other big banks are, causing them to get into financial trouble. Again, not a financial advisor, but I can tell you from my experience, highly recommend you get yourself into a credit union. That's what I do. I can tell you, I bank with Partners, which is the Partners Federal Credit Union, which is for Disney employees. And obviously, I worked at Disney for 8 years, and they don't take away your account when you stop working at Disney. That's what I use as a credit union, and I have minimal complaints compared to a lot of friends I know that use larger banks. So if the minimal advice I will give you, not being an expert, put your money in a credit union. And if you have just tons and tons and tons of money, millions of dollars, diversify, get a financial advisor, and make sure that your stuff is actually insured and not high risk, because that's what you could run into with a bank like Silicon Valley Bank. All right, moving along. Jordan Peterson. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. This guy. We talk about him, self-help and all this other crap, and I still don't understand why anybody listens to a word this guy says. And if that's your deal, that's your deal. You're probably not listening to this podcast, but he really, really went across another line. I think this was yesterday or the day before. Thought he was being slick. He literally tweeted out a pornographic video, and he was claiming, and I don't want to get into the details of this video. You're welcome to Google it. He was claiming that it was a China, reproductive farm. And it involved men, not women. We go to find out. He actually pulled a clip from a, what is the word I'm looking for? A fetish porn website. And this had to do with BDSM type stuff. I don't know all the details. I did happen to catch a second of this video because I was like, oh no. And I got right the hell out of there. I believe it's been deleted since then, but we got to stop letting this guy influence young men. That's the thing. He is a misogynistic asshole. And he can't even get his facts straight. It'd take you 2 seconds to fact check that and be like, oh, wait, no, this isn't some weird place in China. This is actually a pornographic video. What do we say here at Go Tell It to the Wall all the time? Before you post something, fact check. It's not that hard. We got Google, all kinds of stuff, and you can find out the real answer to these things quite easily. So Jordan Peterson just continuing to dig himself into a hole. Although I'm sure he has lots of followers that are like, yes, uncover the whatever he's deep state or good Lord, man. It amazes me how many white men around this country think that there's just a conspiracy out to get them. You have lived in privilege in this country and many other countries as well, obviously. You've lived in privilege in this country for a very, very, very long time. There's no conspiracy out to get you. There's no deep state. None of this is true. So stop listening to Jordan Peterson. I'm not even going to say listen to me. I don't know that I give the best advice, but good Lord, that is terrible advice coming from that man. And he's encouraging a generation of misogynistic assholes is essentially what we're getting at here. I think someone let my dog outside. Now he's barking outside the studio window. Dogs. I love my dog, but good Lord, they're a pain in the ass sometimes. All right, moving along here. Bobo. Good old Lauren Bobo, from Colorado out there. She was trending really for the past week or so for a couple different things. And the one that caught my attention the most was she plans to work to defund Planned Parenthood through her seat in Congress. The beautiful irony of this is the purpose of Planned Parenthood, which is sex education, contraceptives, stuff like that. This is all while we are learning that her 17-year-old son impregnated a teenage girl. Now, there's a lot of back and forth as far as how old the girl is. I've heard she's 15 now. She might have been 14 when they were sexually active. Disgusting. I don't care if you're under 18. That's 17 and 14 is not right. 23 and 20, fine. 17 and 14 is not right. 17 and 15, borderline not right. Now, maybe if they're turning 16 soon and you just turned, I could see that. I'll admit I might have been close to that when I was in high school, but we're not talking like a full 2 years apart. There's a drastic difference between a sophomore and a senior in high school. But the fact that she wants to defund Planned Parenthood, which is out there to avoid what her son has done, is just irony to the extreme. Literally, the reason that we need Planned Parenthood is so that 17-year-olds aren't accidentally getting pregnant. And 17-year-olds aren't accidentally getting 14 or 15-year-olds pregnant. It's too young. This is why contraceptives and sex education are important, but we have people like Lauren Boebert who don't believe in contraceptives, who don't believe in sex education even in high school. You could argue sex education with me for 4th, 5th grade. I think it's beneficial. Kids are going through puberty at that point. But once you're a teenager, it is essential. Otherwise, we are going to have an entire generation of teenage parents, and most of them coming from a household like Bobo's and not knowing any better regarding really anything in the entire world. So let's back off there a little, Bobo. Check yourself and maybe realize that you're being contradictive to what is important, especially when you are literally an example of it. Your family is exemplifying the importance of something like Planned Parenthood and sexual education. It's really, really maddening to me. All right, Ted Cruz was trending this week. This guy. So this more just irony and hypocrisy. Ted Cruz is promoting his new book. It is called Unwoke, and there's something out like getting rid of wokeness in America or something. This is another one of my favorite terms. Like, what is woke to you? Why is woke such a bad word to conservatives in this country and really around the world, I'm sure? It's just I experience mostly what's going on in the United States of America. And he's been promoting the book on Twitter. The great thing about it is he's just tweeting the cover of the book, and it says Ted Cruz at the top, and it says Unwoke. Talk about an incredible self-own. He's just saying, yeah, I'm unwoke. And the other funny thing is I did see a stat the other day. Most people around the United States of America actually believe that woke culture, whatever the hell that is, I don't even, to me, it's just, it's sympathy for your fellow man, and it's equal respect among races and genders and communities. But to me, it's kind of like, oh, Antifa, this organization and stuff. It's like, no, Antifa isn't an organized organization. I'm sure there are bad people that are like Antifa, but it stands for anti-fascist. So you're saying you're not anti-fascist if you're against Antifa. You're saying you're against sympathy for your fellow man if you're against wokeness at this point, as far as I can understand. It's a good old Teddy Cruz down there, self-owning himself with his Unwoke book. And chances are, like I always say, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably not reading Ted Cruz's book. Let's just call it what it is. All right, the MAGA shaman, his real name was trending too, and I was like, oh my God, he's got a real name. And I can't even remember what his real name is, but this is fascinating. And he's trending on the social platforms because people are coming out and saying, oh, well, he was escorted into the Capitol to do a tour or some bullshit, which is obviously the conservative narrative being pushed around the occurrences of January 6th and the attack on the U.S. Capitol. Again, people are saying he was escorted in, and they're tweeting this and posting about this. And then we have the other side that is posting video, literal video, of him actually breaking through the doors into the Capitol. That's the other thing, too. It's like, even if he was escorted into the Capitol, we saw the pictures 2 years ago of him just sitting where he's not supposed to be sitting. He's trespassing. Even if he was escorted through the front door, he's still trespassing. The other kicker of this, not only the video, but the dude is in jail. He pled guilty. He essentially said, yeah, I screwed up. I broke in. I am guilty. I will serve my time. The audacity of some people on certain sides of the aisle is just utterly astounding to me. Even the dude himself said, yo, I broke in there, but we're going to go around saying, oh, no, it's a conspiracy and he was escorted in. Give me a fucking break. How is this even possible that we do this? I don't understand it at all. At all. All right, and on a positive note, in many ways a positive note, because I will say we have some laws that are coming out of certain states, specifically, most recently, Tennessee, where they have now made it okay for certain court clerks to deny marriage licenses, not only for same-sex couples. This is the LGBTQ community has been warning everyone for years that it's not going to stop at drag queens. Now they have it where certain people can deny a marriage license to not only same-sex couples, interracial couples. And not only interracial couples, we're talking interfaith couples. Separation of church and state, my ass. That's what we have here. They can deny it. So you have to be of the same faith now? You have to both be Christian? You got to both be Jewish? Give me a break on this. But the good thing coming out of that is, if you're not aware, Dolly Parton is from Tennessee. And she has been staunchly defensive of drag queens and these ridiculous, unfair laws that some states are passing, and specifically Tennessee. And she actually, and this isn't an exact quote, but she said something along the lines of, and I quote, but not exact, I dress more provocatively than drag queens. I hope Tennessee doesn't illegalize me. Something along those lines. And that is, again, in response to the new Tennessee laws that they've been passing down there in that godforsaken state. No offense if you're from Tennessee. I got nothing against the state. I got problems with your state legislature. So let's just get that straight. Don't come at me. Tennessee's fine. I'm sure it's just a fine state. I'm sure there's lots of very nice people there. You got to do something about your state government because this is utterly ridiculous. And on top of that, we've known this for a long time, but this just solidifies it more. We need to protect Dolly Parton at all costs. She is absolutely an ally. She's not afraid to speak out. And honestly, if you're going to fuck with Dolly, you got so many people coming after you. Even these conservatives. What are you're going to go after Dolly Parton? Good luck with that. Oh, man. All right, let's get into some mental health here. So this came out recently. There are apparently studies, I'm finger quoting this, studies that came out regarding the impact of COVID on mental health. And some of these studies have found that there was minimal impact on people's mental health because of the COVID pandemic. Now, I feel like, which one is it? The guy that does the talk show host does the lie detector tests. It's like, and we found out that was a lie. I can tell you from personal experience that is not accurate. And if you do a simple, just scroll through on some of these things, you will see that it is not accurate. It definitely had a negative impact on the mental health of people, definitely in this country, and I'm sure around the world. I'm positive around the world because I've talked to people in other countries that it adversely impacted their mental health. And that's why I bring this up, because me personally, I didn't drive a car for over a year. Well over a year. Last time I drove a car was March 2020, and then I got into a car in May or June of 2021. Driving it. I rode in a car a couple times, but my mental health did not make it easy for me to leave my property. Now, fortunately, I don't live in an apartment, so I was able to get fresh air and stuff, but I was not apt to leave my property too much because it was terrifying for somebody like me who has obsessive compulsive disorder. And on top of that, I said this before, and in fact, there was a post that came up in my memories from 3 years ago when the pandemic first started, where people weren't talking about the mental health impact and how this can adversely affect people with serious mental illnesses. And someone like me with obsessive compulsive disorder, not only is there an added fear of catching something like this, but then it's almost like the things that I've worked on for years, like I'm not going to touch that thing. Or me washing my hands constantly, because part of my obsessive compulsive disorder is a little bit of germophobia. Let's call it a lot of germophobia. But then when you're seeing that people have to be told how to wash their hands, be told not to cover their mouths, stuff like this, it's like, yeah, maybe I was right. Maybe I've been right all this time, and not everyone respects, personal space, the health of others. Getting rid of germs, washing your hands is pretty simple, but not everybody does that. We were in a climate where people had to be told how to wash their fucking hands. And you're telling me that's not going to have an adverse effect on somebody who has a germophobia, who has a mental illness, who has mental health problems, anxiety, anything along those lines? Right there, your study is proven wrong. That is an adverse effect, not a minimal effect. It is an adverse effect on people's mental health. And on top of that, now we have this dude, and this could have gone in digital trends because it was trending on digital platforms, but it really speaks to the mental health side of the COVID pandemic. There is some dude, some asshole, and of course, some white bald guy who, I don't know if he even has a lot of money or not. He's been going on airplanes because, you're not required to wear a mask on an airplane much anymore. And let me tell you, I had someone recently, who has actually listened to this podcast. They took a trip on a plane. It was the only thing the only possible exposure they had. Still wore a mask on the plane. Came down with COVID after that trip. So don't tell me it's a hoax. Don't tell me, and you say, oh, well, that just means masks don't work. No, I'm sure there was a time to take a sip of something. It's that easy. So we have this guy who's riding on planes where you don't have to wear a mask anymore, but many people still do. I would be if I was getting on a plane. I might be wearing a mask on a plane for the rest of my life just because you get sick on planes. We've talked about this before. They literally have an industry of supplements that keep you from getting sick on planes. Because that's where a lot of people get sick. But we have this guy, and he likes to sit next to people. You don't pick your seats out, so he's not picking who he's sitting next to. But if you sit next to somebody or near somebody wearing a mask, he has started to offer money for that person to remove their mask on the plane. Money. And he starts it at $100. And there was one tweet where he said he offered $100,000 to somebody to remove their mask on a plane. And he thought it was crazy that they wouldn't do it. Now, first of all, money to compromise personal beliefs is a whole nother discussion. But we live in this, from a mental health standpoint, we live in this atmosphere where you have people like this running around harassing others. It's none of your damn business. Somebody else, fine, you don't want to wear a mask, you're not required to. I can't argue with you on that. But the thing is, if somebody else wants to wear a mask, leave them the hell alone. It's none of your business. That mask is not affecting you. How is it affecting you? But this is what we deal with. And this is what takes a toll on people's mental health. I made that post about the effect on mental health 3 years ago, and we're still dealing with people on airplanes harassing others for no reason. So they can get some clicks? Give me a break. There's no excuse for that whatsoever. None whatsoever. Although I will say it got me thinking, I kind of want to get on a plane with this guy. And if I need to go keep a picture on my phone. Because if I get on a plane and I see this fucker walking on the plane, I'm going to put on a double mask. And what I'm going to do is if he approaches me and says, and I'll let him start that bidding at 100, but I'm going to let him get to 10 grand. And I'll say, yeah, sure. Pull the top mask off, still got the mask on underneath, and say, where's my 10 grand? Took the mask off. That's what you're asking for, right? Stay strong and do what you need to do. Don't let others influence, especially if it's going to negatively impact your well-being and your mental health. There's no reason for it. We just have assholes out there that get off on being assholes. We've known this forever. It's just exacerbated with social media, especially on a site like Twitter, where it's just, that is a fucking swamp, man. Not swamp man like the comic book character. It's a swamp, man. I don't know. Does that even make... Oh, man. Sometimes, see, I crack myself up so that I don't, then you know when to laugh, I guess. No, and as I always say, have a drink with this podcast. I get funnier if you have a drink. All right, let's talk about some positive news here. I kind of bogarted the positive news this week. This one's for me, but I also know that a lot of people who listen to this podcast share in this being positive news, and have for years. That is specifically the Barstool Preachers out of Brighton, England. I've talked about them many times on this podcast. We've talked about their singles, their videos that have come out. And the reason I'm putting in positive news is because in 2 days, March 14th, we are getting a brand new single and music video from the Barstool Preachers. We have been waiting on new music, got pushed back by the pandemic, everything else, then got pushed back by other stuff. We are finally getting a full new album March 31st, and as all bands do, they're putting out singles in the meantime, and again, this one's coming out on March 14th. It is called Lighthouse Keeper. For those of us that follow the Barstool Preachers really well, and as you know, I've mentioned on here, I run the Facebook group, the Facebook fan group, not the Preachers page, the Facebook fan group. So I'm usually pretty much in the know on these things, and I know there's a lot of excitement swelling over it. And for those of you that have been following, you've probably heard the song because they've done it a couple times on stream, but we haven't gotten the finished song for Lighthouse Keeper. So I'm really excited about that one. And like I said, not only are we getting the single, but we are getting a new music video, which was done by the uber-talented Paul Smith of Zombie Teeth Video. He's got Zombie Teeth clothing, Zombie Teeth video, Zombie Teeth design, too. I just kind of lump, he's got his, that's why I say uber-talented Paul Smith. So I'm really looking forward to that one in 2 days. Mark your calendar, and if you're in the if you're not in the Facebook group and you're a big Barstool Preachers fan, join that Facebook group. It's easy to find, and that'll keep you updated when the video actually drops and all that good stuff. And if you already follow the Barstool Preachers, you're going to see it all over the social media when it does come out. And don't forget, record out March 31st. I believe there are still some pre-sales up for vinyl and new merch coming out. And the Preachers did tease that there's going to be some sort of other announcement along with the single and video that's coming out on March 14th. So make sure you mark your calendars for that one. But yeah, I bogarted the positive news this week because I'm super excited. Lighthouse Keeper, I don't know for sure because I haven't heard the whole album, but I have a feeling it's going to end up being at least, if not my favorite, one of my favorite tracks off the new album because I absolutely love it from when I've heard it on a couple of the streams and stuff like that. I believe they've also played it live. Somebody from the UK will confirm that because they haven't been back to the US since the new music. So I'm hoping to see it in May. I'm sure they will play some of the new songs in May, especially since the album will already be out, and I'll be seeing them at a club show out there at Punk Rock Bowling. All right, let's talk some parenting. We're going to get serious with parenting here, at least for the first couple things, and then some fun stuff. So there is a 31-year-old lunch lady in Connecticut who was recently busted and charged with sexual assault. And the reason she was charged with sexual assault is apparently had been sending explicit photos to a 14-year-old. And I know 14 could possibly be a high school, but this was a middle school. We are talking like 6th through 8th grade or whatever. And probably should have asked my wife before I came in, but some states have it like 8, middle school is like 7th, 8th grade, whatever it is. But nonetheless, not even in high school. High school wouldn't make it okay either, but this is a minor, a 31-year-old and a 14-year-old. This is unacceptable no matter what. But the reason I bring it up, it's terrifying as a parent. And if you see these posts on social media, when they come up, never fail. And this has happened forever. I mean, I remember like back in the 90s when there was a couple of these in huge controversy. And whenever it is a female teacher and a male student, men like to come out and say things like, oh, why didn't this happen when I was a kid? Why didn't blah, 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 or lucky kid and all this other stuff. Here's the thing. First of all, if you just take it and reverse the genders, would these guys be saying the same thing? I hope not. Most likely not. They're just masculine and think that all males just want to constantly have sex and that it's not actually sexual assault, despite the fact that it's a 31-year-old and a 14-year-old. She clearly took advantage of him. So as a parent, this is absolutely terrifying in general. But then as just a human being, we need to make sure people understand that this is sexual assault. It's not okay just because it's a female adult and a male minor. It's the same thing. And then on top of that, we want to talk about grooming. Drag queens are grooming kids and all this other stuff. The LGBTQ community is grooming kids. No, 31-year-old teachers in Connecticut are grooming kids. Bobo out there in Colorado is grooming kids. The evidence is right there. You find me one instance of a drag queen grooming somebody. You can't. You can't. But go look at churches. Lots of it going on there. This is unacceptable. And I can't stand the fact that men are out there like, oh, I wish it was me. It's like, you may think that, but you don't. That poor kid is going to be in therapy for such a long time. It's not right. Not right at all. Call it what it is. All right, I'm going to rail against this one, too. I can't even remember where this was, but there was a father with a 6-year-old, and it was in an area of the country where it's quite cold. And not cold like in Southern California, how it's been for a week or two here. Like snow, regularly cold type situation. Apparently, the 6-year-old had broken his ankle. And the father took him to a hospital, was denied admittance into the hospital, and you guessed it, because he refused to put on a mask and refused to put a mask on his 6-year-old. So he tweets out a photo of his 6-year-old sitting in the cold, bundled up, trying to stay warm with a broken ankle. Took the time to tweet this out. Not only that, but he used the term, and I quote, godless masks. Godless masks. Like, what? It's a fucking piece of fabric. What is it? I've been saying this for 3 years. What's the big deal? Get over it. If you cared about your child, you would just put the mask on and get them in there for care. What's your priority? Standing against the, finger quote, tyranny of godless masks, or making sure your kid is taken care of? I can't get over that. Godless masks. Poor kid sitting in the cold. I hope that kid grows up, realizes that his dad is an asshole, and never talks to him again. And not only, like, it's bad enough to do this, but then to post about it? really hoping Child Protective Services in that area got called and this starts an investigation, because there's utterly no excuse for that kind of behavior. Not at all. Let's knock it off. Your number one priority should be your kids. I would carry my daughter across hot coals into the entrance of a hospital if she needed to get medical care, let alone put a piece of fabric over my face. Give me a break. All right, I'll tell you about a couple fun little things here. So I've talked about it. My kid played basketball for the first time this year, and she's actually going to play in the summer again. She really enjoys it. She's got a long way to go, but she's 6. And for those of you that have kids of a certain age and they're in sports, and even if you don't have kids, you've probably seen, there's a funny video I saw of kids playing t-ball. And it even says, like, watch a different kid each time, and it's just chaos out there on the baseball. And fun chaos. Like, the kids are having fun. That's what it is with my kid. Like, they don't keep score when you're 6, at least not at the rec center where she plays. And, so they're having fun. That's the most important thing. But I have reached peak basketball dad status. We had her award ceremony banquet thing. If you were ever in sports, you have kids in sports, they do a little award, and you get, they got medals, and sometimes you get trophies, whatever it might be, for playing on the thing. And we had pictures. We ordered just a few pictures because they do like team pictures and individual pictures. And I get the thing, and I'm like, oh, it's one of these buttons in there. One of the larger buttons has got the picture of my kid on there in her basketball uniform. I'm going, oh. I have reached peak basketball dad, because I'm going to be wearing that button when she's next playing in basketball. I might wear it for her tennis stuff. Who knows? But I have definitely reached that point. And on a positive note for me and my family and many families out there, maybe not for all of you out there that wait patiently or impatiently every year, we have reached the end of cookie season for Girl Scouts. Today was the last day, I believe, and yesterday might have been the last day to order, like online and that kind of stuff. But today my kid went and did a cookie booth. You see Girl Scouts outside at grocery stores and stuff. It's usually their troop like organizes it, and everyone gets a turn to do it. She had her last one, and I'll tell you, see, and I don't get as much of the cookie madness. I just have people bugging me for cookies, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, what do you need? And my wife takes the brunt of it. She's picking up cookies. She's delivering cookies, doing all this stuff. And the relief on my wife's face when they came home, she goes, oh, it's finally done for this year. It's finally done. Man, the things we do for our kids and our friends, really, because that's the thing. Is there is a shortage on, and I don't know why this has happened. Apparently, some of the Girl Scout troops around Southern California have been calling, because there's a couple different bakeries, and there's one that kind of services the West and one that services the East, from what I understand. Nobody quote me on that, but I do know that one of the bakeries has been receiving some backlash. So that was another thing my wife had to deal with, because there were certain cookies you couldn't order, but we had ordered them like to have as backups, and so she's dealing with like, yo, we got to get some Samoas. We can't order them. And it's like, well, it's kind of like a dealer. I got a couple of those Samoa boxes at the house if you need one. So it's wild out there for cookie season, man. And I'll tell you, I haven't eaten a single Girl Scout cookie this year. Not because I'm like super healthy or anything, but I save my calories for drinks. So I try not to eat too much sugar, because when both of them together, oh, that's putting on a little extra weight there. So it's not that I'm super healthy. It's just that I prefer to put my calories into things involving alcohol as opposed to things involving sugar, at least at this point in my life. All right, let's talk some common sense. And hopefully you got your cookies in time, because the season is over. You got to wait till next year. Well, and then I just move on to one fundraiser after another. They overlap, because you got school fundraisers, and then you got the cookie sales. And I only have one kid. Like, people that have 3-4 kids, it's like, oh my God, you got to, how do you even do this? They all got to sell a little something for the fundraiser. It's just utterly wild. Oh, and I will say, that's a fun thing I got to do. From a parenting standpoint, and I know this can be nostalgic for everyone out there, Scholastic book fairs, they are still all the rage. My kid had one at her school, and all the schools still do it, apparently. I loved it when I was a kid. We're talking the 80s. It's still around, and the excitement you see on these kids' faces as they get to go in and buy a couple books and like a pen and a notebook and all that kind of stuff, it's just awesome seeing it. And I do a little volunteering at the school, so I was watching kids and parents go in and out, and it's just like, oh yeah, I remember this from when I was a kid, and it's still all the rage for kids. It's just you can't kill books. Adults always gonna love books, and always gonna love a Scholastic book fair. All right, let's talk some common sense now that we got a little tangented there. Tiger Woods, he's back in the news, and not for his golf, because he's always in the news a bit for his golf. He's been back after injury for a little while now, on and off. But apparently he's getting into a legal battle with his ex-girlfriend. And I don't know all the details on this. I don't care to know all the details on this. What I do know is that when this first came out, it was apparent that Tiger Woods made his girlfriend at the time, now ex-girlfriend, sign an NDA. For those of you that don't know what an NDA is, it is a non-disclosure agreement. This is something frequent with companies, with studios. I've signed them many times throughout my life. It's more for the purpose of protecting intellectual property, IP. So you can't, work at Disney on something and then take your knowledge of that property and take it somewhere else. That's why you sign these things. You don't usually sign one for a relationship. And I think, what do the kids say these days? It's red flags. That is probably one of the biggest red flags you're ever going to see in your life, is if you start dating someone and they want you to sign a non-disclosure agreement to continue dating them. I'm going to tell you right now, do not ever get into a relationship that way. Don't. Just don't do it. I don't care if he's a millionaire athlete like Tiger Woods. Don't do that. There's no reason for that. Speaking of ridiculous people, Joe Rogan. Talking about Joe Rogan again. So this guy has decided he's going to open his own comedy club. I'm sure I don't know exactly where it is, but I assume it's going to be in Austin, because he lives in Texas now. He moved years ago from California to Texas. And that's fine. Open a comedy club. I'm not into your stuff. You're ridiculous. You're spreading misinformation, but you have every right to open a comedy club. The common sense side of this comes from the fact that he said he's opening his own comedy club to avoid cancel culture, and I quote, "You can't cancel me in my own club." I cannot tell you how much this still irritates me, this whole cancel culture thing. Look at Jordan Peterson. He's tweeting out pornographic videos. He's still got tons of followers. But the one that gets me the most is the Joe Rogans, the Dave Chappelles, the Chris Rocks, where they sit on a podcast or stand on a stage for a comedy special and talk about how they are a victim of cancel culture while they are making millions of dollars off of their comedy. You're not canceled if you're still making millions of dollars off your comedy. Joe Rogan makes something like $100,000 an episode. He's making like 6 figures a year. $100 to $200 million a year. You haven't been canceled, my friend. Canceled would mean you are poor and nobody listens to you. You still have plenty of fans. You just can't handle backlash. Millions of dollars. And he thinks he's canceled. That Chris Rock special is all about being canceled. And it's like, dude, Netflix gave you tons of money to go do this. You're not canceled. That's why I can't stand this whole cancel culture thing. It's like, what do you mean cancel? So the people that don't like you, you need to force them to like you? That sounds more ridiculous than this cancel culture stuff that we hear just thrown around like crazy. Utterly ridiculous. Buffalo Wild Wings. There's a Buffalo Wild Wings lawsuit that is in the news right now. And apparently there's a gentleman who saw fit to sue Buffalo Wild Wings, bring a lawsuit against Buffalo Wild Wings, because of their boneless wings. And he claims that their marketing is deceptive regarding the boneless wings because they're not actually boneless wings. They are pieces of chicken breast that are fried up and put sauce on them and everything else. And that is deceptive, and they are overcharging because they're not actually chicken wings. Okay, first, let's unpack this for a second. First of all, you go to any chicken wing place, you're not getting a full chicken wing anyway. The full chicken wing is a wing and a little drumstick. You're getting one. So they're literally breaking apart the wing, and it's 2 pieces, and they're calling it 2. Okay? Also, if you were under the impression that boneless wings were actual wings, I don't know what else to tell you. They're clearly not wings. They are nuggets. They are strips, chicken strips. We've known this for a long time. And then on top of that, he's saying they're overcharging because they're not actually wings. Hi, have you ever been to any kind of restaurant or the store where chicken breasts actually do cost more than chicken legs and chicken thighs? They do. You go to some restaurants, you want all white meat chicken. Sometimes it's an upcharge. I do this a lot because at Chinese restaurants, I'm like, I want all white meat chicken. They're like, okay, it's $1. Fine. No, all good. No problem here. So the fact that you're saying you're being overcharged when you're getting chicken breasts as opposed to dark meat chicken doesn't even make sense. And I will make a confession to all of you out there. This guy has way too much free time. Like, what the hell? Is this the McDonald's coffee all over again? And I will confess to all of you out there, if I go to a place like Buffalo Wild Wings, Hooters, I enjoy Hooters. I don't enjoy Hooters for the waitress, the servers. It's fine, do you? I enjoy the chicken there. But my own confession, I prefer a boneless wing. I prefer a nugget, a chicken strip. Give me that stuff. I will eat a chicken wing, but it's too much work for me. I'm just a bit lazy, and I just prefer white meat chicken. I like a chicken breast as opposed to a chicken thigh or legs, anything like that, drumsticks, that kind of stuff. That's just my preference. But common sense says we don't actually think that boneless buffalo wings are actual wings, my friend. Ugh. All right. Saturday Night Live. They are looking at a potential labor strike. Now, I wasn't fully in the loop on this, but apparently the post-production team at Saturday Night Live fairly recently unionized. So they are now part of the Editors Guild of America, which is obviously a creative union for television and film. They have yet to reach a new contract agreement, so they have set a date to either have an agreement or strike, and that date is going to be April 1st for Saturday Night Live. They have put this out publicly. And for those of you that have, even if you haven't been a long-time listener of Go Tell It to the Wall or Common Sense Sundays, you know that we here at Go Tell It to the Wall are beyond pro-union. Unions are what keeps this country moving. Unions are what keep things fair for union workers versus corporations. I can't express how pro-union I am and really anybody that works on this show. We have people that help on this show that are literally in unions. I have many friends that are in unions, labor unions, creative unions, all kinds of things. We are pro-union. So we stand with the post-production team at Saturday Night Live. The other interesting thing is last night I was doing some edit. I can't remember what I was doing, but I had the TV on the background. My wife's asleep on the couch, and I don't know if Saturday Night Live was on, but I just had like network TV on, and I did actually see a commercial for the April 1st episode of Saturday Night Live. It's currently March 12th. So who knows if that's even going to happen, but good on you, post-production team at Saturday Night Live, and don't back down. That's why we have unions. We stand with you, and that's the importance of unions in this country and around the world. The 8-hour workday is brought to you by unions, as opposed to the 12-hour workday, the seven-day work week. You can thank unions for that. All right, let's talk some entertainment news. Of course, I have to mention it. The Oscars are tonight, like the 95th Oscars or something. I don't know. I really don't care. I don't watch the Oscars. I used to watch them when I was in film school. I used to watch them when I was working on certain properties that might have been involved in the Oscars. I don't watch them anymore. Nothing against you if you want to watch them, but it's just simply not for me. I will say I saw, and this is not an exact quote, and I can't take credit for it, but I did see somebody saying, because we often have people get up there and they want to talk about climate change or they want to talk about veganism to save the earth and everything else. But this joke that I saw in this quote was something along the lines of the Oscars, when the stars lecture you about being good for the environment and then fly home on their private jets. I mean, it sounds somewhat accurate to me because they're doing that. All right. Scream 6. This is a movie that recently came out in theaters, and they put that, is it Jenna Ortega or whatever? They're going to put her in everything kind of creepy now because of Wednesday. So she's in this movie, and I saw recently that she's going to be involved in Beetlejuice 2. And it's like, all right, we're just putting her in everything that has a little creepiness to it. It's like the new. And I don't want to say she's the new Christina Ricci just because of the Wednesday thing, but you have those actresses that kind of constantly got those roles, and now it looks like Jenna Ortega is going to kind of be pulling in those roles. But the thing that got me with Scream 6 is I found this on the social platforms. Apparently, and I don't know if this is everywhere, maybe it's only certain theaters, but apparently before they start the film, Scream 6, what they do is at these theaters, they're popping up essentially a noise meter. You've seen this at stadiums and stuff, and, register, how loud can you get, whatever. And what it is it says, you all need to scream to start the movie. So you have a theater full of people screaming their heads off to get the movie Scream 6 to start playing. All I can say is, thanks, movie theaters, you have found one of my personal hells. We don't need to scream to start a movie. Can you imagine? I have tinnitus. Like, that's worse than going to a show and standing in front of the speaker. You got a bunch of high-pitched screaming going on in the middle of a movie theater, enclosed movie theater. Give me a break. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of the Scream stuff. I saw the first one, and I think, oh, God, I saw the first two in the theater, I think. That was, like, the thing to do, and I have nothing against it. I'm just not super into it myself. So I get it if you're into it. Be into it. But good Lord, let's not have a bunch of people screaming in order to get the stupid movie started. That just doesn't make any sense to me. No sense whatsoever. All right, I want to talk some sports ball here for a sec, but this one is from an entertainment standpoint. Many of you, even if you're not a sports fan, are probably familiar with the former college and NBA basketball player Bill Walton. He is quite the character. Now, full disclosure, I never got along with the guy personally. Yes, I grew up in San Diego. Yes, I played club ball in San Diego. Yes, I played club ball against Luke Walton, despite the fact that he was a couple years older than me. I played high school and club ball against his younger brother. I have interacted with Bill Walton. He was never the kind of person that I wanted to hang out with by any means. But he also does commentating for college basketball. And this weekend, for those of you that aren't familiar, college basketball has all their conference tournaments and stuff. And even if you're not familiar, you've heard the term March Madness, which is college basketball. So this is basically the ramp up to March Madness. And then today we found out all the teams that are going to go to the NCAA tournament. So it's rather exciting. And yesterday I was sitting around doing I was actually cleaning my living room and then doing some prep for the show today. And I was like, oh, cool, the Pac-12 championship is on, and it's UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, local school. So, I'm not a big fan, but I cheer for the local state. It's like, hey, LA, I got 5 minutes in to that thing, 5 minutes, and I had to turn it off. Just the rambling of a guy who clearly did too many drugs in his youth and maybe is still doing too many. And by all means, do your drugs. As long as you're not hurting anyone else, that's fine with me. Psychedelics, do you. No problem with it. I'm a huge proponent of recreational, all good. Maybe don't do it before you go on a national broadcast and just incoherently speak off the top of your head things that don't even make sense. And in fact, again, for those of you not familiar, when there's sports, you have the guy that's calling the plays, male or female, man or woman, and then you have like the commentator, so you have that real silky voiced man or woman, and they're calling the action, and then you have which a lot of times it's a funny dude, but nothing. Even the broadcaster that's sitting next to Bill Walton, there's a couple times where he's like, I don't know if he turned to him because you're just hearing him and you're seeing a game, and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Multiple times, over 5 minutes. So I had to turn this shit off. Can we stop putting Bill Walton on basketball games? I know some people are entertained because I went to Twitter and I was like, is everybody as annoyed with him? It's close to 50-50, but if you're alienating half of the people, the other half that is enjoying it is probably still going to watch the game. Let's stop putting Bill Walton on games because I had 5 minutes, had to turn it off. I would have enjoyed the game had he not been talking during the game itself. All right, moving along here. So, do all of you remember Something's Not Right Studios? SNRS, Something's Not Right Studios. That's a good friend of mine, Jeffrey Jackson. It is his channel, and you may remember, especially if you consume our content through YouTube, that we were doing punk rock band suggestions. Just a fun little thing we were doing for some content for Something's Not Right Studios. Well, Jeff and Something's Not Right Studios have recently launched a new podcast called Radio Show. And myself, really mainly myself, not the rest of the Go Tell Us the Wall team, are going to be at least somewhat involved in this. And on Friday night, we actually recorded a episode number 2 for them. So if you go to the Something's Not Right Studios channel on YouTube, you're going to find the most recent episode posted on there. It does feature yours truly, the one and only Sean O'Rourke, as well as Jeff, and a couple of other podcast hosts. It's definitely like a round table radio show. It has more of the feel of a radio show as opposed to like what I do on a weekly basis where I'm talking at a wall, talking about certain topics, which I very much enjoy doing. I think if you're a fan of this podcast, you will also enjoy that one. So make sure you're checking out Something's Not Right Studios on YouTube. Subscribe and you'll get updated when new episodes come out. Now, I won't be on every episode. I believe they were recording another episode today, but Sundays are obviously, we're here in the Go Tell Us the Wall studio. But it's going to be great content coming out of there either way. And again, episode 2 does feature me on the episode itself, so make sure you're checking that out. All right, we got some news from Chaser, one of my absolute favorite bands out of Southern California. Chaser, the band, we've talked about them many times. I had the privilege of seeing them 2 nights in a row recently. Got to shoot them at South Bay Customs. Second time, I mean, I've shot them with the phone a few times, but second time I got to shoot them with the actual camera. So there's going to be some content as far as that goes coming out on Instagram and Facebook. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. They had an announcement recently. They have collaborated with Delahunt Brewery or Brewing, but Delahunt, who is out of San Clemente. They put out some tasty beers. I've had some of their other beers. They're always at the Punk in the Parks and stuff like that for the beer tastings. They have done a collaboration with Chaser. It is a hazy IPA. They're launching their new beer at a show at Tiki Bar in Costa Mesa on April 14th. So if you're in the Southern California area, make sure you pick up a ticket for the Tiki Bar on April 14th and pick up some of that collaborative beer that Chaser has done with Delahunt Brewing. Unfortunately, I won't be there. I have a show conflict that night. I'm very upset. I told Mike he needs to save me some beer, which he gladly agreed to, fortunately. But I'm a little upset I won't be able to see that show, and especially if you're in the area and don't have another show, go to that show. It's Chaser, Fourth in Line, and Let Me Downs. Not only am I disappointed I'm not seeing Chaser and getting the beer, but Let Me Downs are going to be in town for that show, and I unfortunately will have to be at another show that night. So make sure you're checking them out. And that beer might be available through Delahunt. I got to double check with Mike or one of the other guys in the band and see if it is going to be available beyond that show. I know that Chaser's going to have like cases of it, so I'm sure there will be ways to maybe order it or get it or whatever else. But definitely check that out down there at Tiki Bar. All right, Pinks. Venomous Pinks are in town. I think I mentioned this last episode or the episode before. That is the show that I'm heading out to minutes after we finish up here in the Valley at Corbin Bull. So if you're in or around the Valley here in Los Angeles, head on over to Corbin Bull. It's like a $10 cover. You're going to get Venomous Pinks, Bloody Betty, Blowtorch, and I believe there's another band, Venomous Pinks. That's why originally they had the event set up as doors at 8, and I was like, I got time. And then between the not realizing my clock hadn't changed and then seeing that the set list or set times came out, they're going on at 7:45. So make your way over to the Valley if you're going to be hitting that up. I will also be seeing them next Saturday at South Bay Customs. And there's still tickets available for that one. I love that venue. It's a small, cool little venue. I'm looking forward to seeing the Pinks there, and especially because if you follow Instagram, I recently posted some Pinks photos from December in the locker room down there at Garden Amp, and I've yet to meet a photographer that's like, oh yeah, I love shooting in the locker room. Like, no, I was there last weekend, and it was like, talked to a couple, and they're like, oh god, I hate shooting in there. Just the lighting's not good. And then on top of that, the drummer is like pushed way back, so I'm making sure to get more coverage, and specifically, I mean, all three of them, but specifically Cassie, because South Bay Customs is set up real well to actually shoot the drummer, as opposed to some venues where the drummer's just tucked back, and you're like, I can't get to the drummer, type thing. So I'll be out there, and I know tickets are still available for that one. And that reminds me, if you're going to be there, now it's sold out, but if you've already got your tickets, I'll be down there for We Are the Union, Catbite, and Kill Lincoln at Observatory in Santa Ana on Friday. So if you see me running around there, I got some stickers for you and all that good stuff. All right. Yeah. Let me mention one more. Because the following weekend, I will be out at Punk in the Park up there in Ventura. I believe tickets are still available for that one now. Me and my sis Laura, we had debated going and then saw that the Bouncing Souls were added, and we said, no, now we're going. But then since then, the Souls actually announced a show that they're going to be doing at the Knitting Factory there in North Hollywood the night before Punk in the Park in Ventura. They're headlining. That one is actually sold out. But again, if you have tickets, I will be running around there as well as some other people that were able to snag tickets in time. And if you didn't get tickets and you still want to check out their record store pop-up that they're doing in downtown Los Angeles on that same Friday, which March 24th. So I'll be out at both of those. We'll talk about this May-June gauntlet next episode. All right, on that note, I don't have it right in front of me, but make sure you're pre-ordering your Bases Against Racists t-shirts. We'll talk more specific. We talked specifics about it last week. We'll talk more specifics about it again next episode. That being said, I don't have my calendar in front of me, but we should be back next Sunday, same wall place, same wall time. In the meantime, make sure you're following us on all the social platforms, facebook.com/go tell it to the wall. Again, facebook.com/go tell it to the wall. Also, youtube.com/go tell it to the wall. Make sure you subscribe and check out all of our videos up there. And of course, my own personal Instagram, which is at SoCalSean. And don't forget to bookmark SeanO'RourkeLive.com, where you're going to find exclusive content, links to all those social platforms, as well as a link to our Patreon campaign and a link to our merch website if you want to support us financially. All right. On that note, Wall fans, Common Sensors podcast consumers, this has been episode 101 of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, your favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke. And until next time, remember, no matter what you do, no matter who you're with, no matter where you go, and especially no matter why you are doing it, always, always use common sense.